All right, see the screen.
Boom.
Where's Parker?
See me? Here I am.
See you. We're getting thumbs up from the crowd.
Good. All right, welcome everybody. We're going to get started in a couple minutes, but while we're waiting, I'd love to know a little bit about you guys, maybe where you're from. I'll start us off here. I'm Parker, and I'm living in Salt Lake City right now with my beautiful French bulldog, Leia. Coy, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. You're from Atlanta. Awesome. Norwalk, Connecticut. Welcome, Avery. Jeff is from New York City with a rat emoji. Perfect. All right, welcome Brett from Waco, Texas. Awesome. I'm heading there this afternoon to Austin, not Waco. Close enough, maybe. Perfect. Okay. Jeff, should we get started? You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. All right, welcome everybody. First, I'll introduce myself. My name is Parker Rogers. I will be the host of this event. I have a background in front-end computer programming and data analytics, and I'm currently working at Census as the data community evangelist. So my goal here at Census is to participate in the greater data community, you guys, so that we can all learn best practices with our data and eventually grow our careers. And Jeff, would you like to introduce yourself before we get started?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Just realized that if there's any sounds that come from people typing, leaving comments, you don't need to hear that. I'm Jeff Sloan. I'm a customer data architect at Census, but for the past 7 or 8 years, I've been working in data and product, oftentimes with product or performance marketing teams, helping them to understand the conversions that their ad campaigns are driving and which campaigns are the most valuable. So I'm really excited about the possibilities of offline conversion tracking for these teams and how it helps them align even with other parts of the business.
And what he didn't mention is Jeff probably knows over 10 data languages. He's used every data platform you can imagine. So he's someone that I can trust with solutions for Google Ads offline conversions, and I'm sure he's someone you guys can trust too.
It's very kind. I've been around a lot and seen a lot of different things, and definitely have some opinions. So if you have any questions on data tooling whatsoever, BI platforms, anything, please do reach out.
All right, let's dive in. So before we get started, we want to quickly introduce the company that we both work for, Census. In a nutshell, Census allows you to sync data from your data warehouse into operational tools like Google Ads. And the purpose of this is that the data warehouse has like a full picture of who your customer is, whereas a Google Ads platform might only have like 60% of the information you'd like to know about your customer. This could be due to ad blockers or due to conversions that you're not recording later on down the sales funnel, whatever it is. If you sync data from your data warehouse into Google Ads, you can kind of improve the algorithm and get a better return on your ad spend.
And
Sir, you got it.
I was going to say, that's exactly what we're here to talk about. Sending this data from the data warehouse to Google Ads to track offline conversions. We're here to talk about what offline conversions are. We're going to talk about when to use them, different use cases you might have in mind for offline conversions, and why they're important Like, what are the mechanisms that drive improved ROI from offline conversions within Google Ads? We're then going to walk through setting them up using Census to send data from your data warehouse into Google Ads. And finally, we're going to walk through some considerations you might want to have when deciding what's a good offline conversion to optimize for. So if I lose you at any point, or if you fall asleep, I don't blame you. Google Ads is exciting. Warehouses are exciting. We're going to talk a lot about them, but I want you to take away these two key points. Offline conversions allow you to optimize for what matters most to you and your business, not just what's easily accessible through traditional online event tracking or conversion tracking. And they're also easy to set up and maintain with reverse ETL tools like Census. So getting stuck in here, what are offline conversions? And I'm going to define them pretty loosely and broadly and compare them to traditional online conversions in a second. But offline conversions are milestones that occur outside of your traditional web tracking. So your traditional web tracking probably looks something like the following. Somebody searches for your business, or they make a search on Google Ads, they click on the ad, they come to your site, and then maybe they submit a contact us form or request a demo, something along these lines. This person ends up in your CRM, but you also end up firing a conversion event for the form submission back to Google Ads to say, hey, this particular transaction came from this ad click. And in traditional online conversion tracking, this is where the story ends. But oftentimes the most important events occur after that initial form submission. So I'm going to walk through a couple examples here, and kind of completing the loop off the back of this one is our first example, which is we might want to optimize our ad campaigns, not just for leads created, but we might want to optimize our campaigns for leads that ultimately convert. So somebody comes in via Google ad, they end up in our CRM, and they ultimately convert. We want to pass that information back to Google Ads, so that way our performance marketing teams can optimize for this particular style of event, this particular conversion, not just the lead submission. In maybe more of a B2C context, we can think of maybe, for example, a services marketplace. I don't know if any of these folks do it, but you can imagine an OpenTable or a Booking.com or even a MindBody, one of these types of organizations where you make a reservation of a particular class or restaurant. They might want to optimize for the bookings that ultimately take place through their service. So somebody might come in, make a reservation. That reservation is passed back as an online conversion to Google Ads. But realistically, after a period of time, either the restaurant booking takes place, somebody shows up to the workout class, and this is pretty important this might be important for OpenTable or that company if that is how they end up monetizing on the person actually showing up. But it's certainly important for the supplier side of this interaction, where they could have placed somebody else in that table for a restaurant booking or somebody else in that workout class, for example. And another example is one that's near and dear to my heart. It's actually from one of our users here at Census, a company called Impera. They're optimizing actually for users reaching a particular product milestone. So Impera is doing something pretty nifty here. They are a service that allows you to automate data entry by taking a look at, say, PDFs and images and extracting that information into more machine-readable formats, stuff that typically takes a lot of human effort and time to enter this data into various places. They can help you automate this particular function. And what they're doing is they're taking a look at, of the people that start a free trial, how many successfully complete their onboarding or hit certain milestones within the product, and optimizing their paid ads to look at more users and attract more users that ultimately reach this conversion milestone. Very impressive stuff here. So we've talked about a couple different examples of what offline conversions might look like for different businesses. But why do they matter in the first place? They can help you improve your paid ads ROI through two key mechanisms here. One is through smart bidding within Google Ads. So you can say, hey, Google Ads, find me conversions of this type at this target cost per action, or this return on ad spend, or even, hey, here's my budget, find me as many of these conversions as you can. And Google Ads uses machine learning algorithms to say, hey, when should I show this ad, on which devices, which browser languages respond best to this particular ad campaign. But it relies on data that you pass back to it in order to train these machine learning models and learn when to do this. With offline conversions, you can train Google to look and target these particular conversion actions, not just the ones that occur during your kind of traditional front-end tracking. And the second piece is something that I'm a little bit ashamed to admit as a business intelligence professional, which is that oftentimes paid ads professionals are looking for reporting and analytics within the tools that they use every day, and may not actually be looking at the dashboards and reports that I've built for them within some sort of BI platform. I might be involved in helping to the marketing team to implement really sophisticated attribution models between different channels, and all of that might be incredibly important. But it does involve folks going into a different tool, analyzing the data, and then moving back into the tool that they use every day. By getting more data and better data into tools that people use every day, like Google Ads or Facebook Ads, et cetera, you're actually getting this information in front of the people in the places where they're most likely to use it, so they can make faster decisions and better decisions. So that's offline conversions in a nutshell. That's kind of the talky bit. We're now going to look at how to set them up in a tool like Census. So a little bit of a demo as to what to set up and what to set up in Census itself. So before we get into the Census piece, let's talk a little bit about some of your options more broadly here when setting up offline conversions. You can send offline conversions and upload offline conversions using a CSV, manual uploads, to Google Ads. You can use native third-party integrations. Some CRMs can pass information back to Google Ads about an offline conversion. And finally, the one that we're going to talk about today is you could take advantage of the Google Ads API, specifically with Census. And the key benefit here is between these two different options, number one, it's not manual, it's automated, especially if you have automated bidding based off of trained data sets. You want that data to be as fresh as you can make it. The second piece is around attribution modeling. So with a native third-party integration, you're trusting how they're attributing a particular offline conversion to a Google click. By taking advantage of the Google Ads API, and particularly a warehouse-first approach, you can evaluate, hey, these are the Google click IDs, or these are the ad clicks that I want to associate with this particular conversion in a way that's most effective for you. So we're going to take a look at this approach here, and specifically what you're going to need. You're probably going to need a setup like this to take advantage of this data within your warehouse. You're going to need a Google Ads account. No surprises here. You're going to need to be running ads with that Google Ads account. You're going to need to capture data around who clicked those ads, as well as the offline conversion itself. You're going to need a place to store that data and bring that data together, like a data warehouse. And then finally, you're going to need to pipe that data and upload that data to Google Ads. And we'll walk through the steps specifically of setting up that reverse ETL pipeline from a data warehouse into Google Ads. I put some example tools here, but you might have different ones in your organization. Even with page view data, you might be using Google Analytics, or with the data warehouse, you might be using something like Redshift or BigQuery in your organization. So what data does Google Ads need in order to register an offline conversion? It's going to need these three particular pieces. So the Google Click ID, that's which ad click led to a conversion. the name of the conversion, and the timestamp that the conversion occurred. And once you have this information, you can pass it on to Google Ads using these 5 steps. Step 1, you're going to need to configure Google Ads to accept offline conversions via API. You're going to establish connections in Census between your data warehouse and Google Ads. You're going to find your data within your data warehouse. And finally, you sync that data to Google Ads so you can use it. Configuring Google Ads is actually a pretty simple step here. So we're going to need to go to the Conversions tab and add a new conversion event. Select that we're importing this data from other data sources and CRMs, specifically tracking conversions from clicks. We're going to need to give that conversion a name and hold on to that. Evaluate whether or not this has a default value, different values per conversion, or no value at all associated with it. And then another really important parameter to set when you're setting up your offline conversions is whether to count this offline conversion once or multiple times. For safety's sake, highly recommend clicking only once if it's a very typical offline conversion, like reached product milestone X or lead converted, because it makes it very, very difficult for the data quality to get disrupted within Google Ads. It'll reject anything that looks like a duplicate on its side. Whereas with track multiple, this might be useful for multiple orders, but it can lead to some weird data discrepancies later on down the line. So highly, highly thinking very carefully about this particular parameter. Next step, connections in Census. So we need to be able to connect to the data warehouse, and you can put in a couple credentials, user credentials here, so that way we can query the data sets we need. And then you can connect to Google Ads using a typical OAuth flow. We have documentation on this stuff. If you're ever curious on how to do this or the specifics of this, but if you've ever worked with traditional ETL tools or any type of SQL client, you'll probably be very familiar with these types of inputs and particular kind of setup processes. Step 3, we need to find our data, specifically those 3 data points that we just spoke about. So here I have an example table that has that's called converted leads, and I have the Google Click ID that I need. I have a conversion name of lead converted, and I need the date of the conversion. And I can save that within Census, so that way Census knows, hey, this is the data set that I need to pull from when I'm sending this data onto Google Ads. And the final component before we use the data, we need to let Census know how to map what's in that data set onto Google Ads by creating a sink. Here we can select our source, which is what we just created. Select the destination we want to sync this data to, which is Google Ads, specifically a click conversion. And then finally, again, we're going to map the parameters within the data set we just saw and the Google Ads API. So here we're mapping the Google Click ID, the conversion name itself, as well as the timestamp. Then we can set up this sync. Actually, wait a minute, before we do that, we can also pass some additional parameters like the conversion value or the currency code, if that's relevant to your offline conversion. We can then click to save the sync, which gives us a couple options here. We can set up the sync on a schedule, so that way data is getting loaded in periodically into Google Ads. We can see any sync history here around what's been sent over, any rejected records, who's made changes to the sync. We can also set up alerts on whether or not there's any data quality issues or any connection issues between the two sides. And this typically takes a couple hours for the data to start registering in Google Ads, but this is like a cooking show. So we actually have an example report of what this might look like in the Google Ads interface. This is what it looks like on the opposite side. So now you can start using your conversions. Specifically, you might have reports that rely on this data, this offline conversions data. And you can also use this as a conversion action to target in your ad campaigns. So from beginning to end, we've kind of walked through this process in about 5 minutes of explaining the steps. But in practice, if the data is available in your data warehouse, this can take less than an hour to set up from beginning to end in human time. There's some configuration time on the Google Ads side, but the key things here, we've talked about what offline conversions are and when to use them. We've then walked through setting this up, but what makes a good offline conversion to track in the first place? And that's kind of the third point that we're going to talk about today, is identifying what makes sense to optimize for. And from what we're seeing, there's 3 key parameters that you want to take into consideration when choosing an offline conversion to optimize for. And they're as follows. An ideal offline conversion is of higher volume. It has a lower time to action between somebody clicking on the ad and ultimately taking that offline conversion. And it aligns with some other part of the business. In turn, a higher volume means you're able to train the Google Ads machine learning algorithms a lot more effectively. A lower time to action also means that you can train those algorithms faster and also respond more to changing real-time conditions. So you can imagine something like a pandemic, or even more realistic at this point, or I guess hopefully there's not another one, but even more realistic at this point, competition comes in and starts bidding for the same keywords. You want your Google Ads instance to respond to these changing conditions, hopefully in more real time. And as far as number 3 goes, by combining or by tracking an offline conversion and optimizing an offline conversion that sits with the rest of the business, your paid ads team is now pulling in the same direction as other parts of the business, and this can have a pretty powerful effect.
So
go ahead.
Quick question if you go back to the last one. So
yeah.
If I were a consumer-facing company and I was doing e-commerce, like what would be an ideal conversion? I'm kind of thinking like an add to cart, but is there another one that really fits this mold?
A couple, I mean, in this case, for a typical e-commerce business, in some e-commerce businesses, I'd take a look at cancellation rates. So there might be some sort of lag between when a booking gets made, or rather an order gets created, and when that ultimately gets canceled. If this is material in some fashion, this might be really useful as an offline conversion to track. Some interesting stuff as well with offline conversions in e-commerce businesses that I've seen and heard of is actually sending the conversion again, like the order created, but instead of the just kind of passing the order's actual value, passing the expected value of the customer that you just acquired as the conversion value, and then optimizing your ad campaigns based off of the expected LTV of a particular e-commerce customer. That's something that I think is pretty cool as well in the e-commerce space. But I'm going to jump into, does that answer the question before I just jump ahead?
Yes, definitely.
Cool. So we're just walking through these considerations step by step. I'm going to take a B2B case here. You can imagine a couple different conversion points for any type of B2B business, which have varying weights of volume and value to the business. So the most valuable conversion event might be contracts ultimately being signed, but they occur at a significantly lower volume to leads actually being created. And in this case, there needs to be some sort of trade-off to have sufficient volume, but perhaps more value than the online conversion that might be easily tracked. And that might be, say, qualified leads in this case. Similarly, we might want to make sure that we're training our Google Ads account very quickly, responsive to real-time changing conditions. In a B2B funnel sense, we see similarly that it takes a longer period of time to go from these particular conversion points to the most valuable conversion, which is the contract being signed. In this case, it can be useful to kind of pull that forward and again, look at something like qualified leads that sits between the online conversion that you're tracking using traditional methods and what you can easily evaluate using offline conversions. And that last bit, you want to align your offline conversions with the rest of the business if you can. And some examples of this might include your paid ads team or your performance marketing team pulling in the same weight as your sales team to get trials started, not just leads or calls booked, or your product team to activate users and find users that are going to onboard themselves effectively. You're finding the most valuable users or the most interested high intent users through your paid marketing. Or the holy grail here is some sort of monetizable event that meets those other two conditions that we spoke about before. And for example, for that B2C services marketplace, that might be whether or not that booking ultimately happens. So we've walked through what offline conversions are, when to use them, some example use cases. We've even gone ahead through the process of setting them up with Census and sending data with Census, as well as spoken about some considerations. But at the end of the day, again, I'm going to leave us with those two takeaways that we led with, which is that offline conversions really do allow you to optimize for what matters, not what's just easily the most accessible through traditional event tracking. And the second piece is that it's easy to set up and maintain offline conversions tracking using reverse ETL tools like Census. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, your questions. If you have any experience using offline conversions in other ways or other methods to send this data to Google Ads, we'll take some questions here and now, but you can always reach out on LinkedIn for sure. I'd love to speak with you about what you're doing, or if you have any kind of questions that you want to personally answer.
We did get some good questions in the comments. The first one, go to this one. Okay, Brett, looks like we answered that question for you. Yes, you do need a Google Click ID in each conversion for it to be uploaded. If you don't, Google Ads just won't accept it. You'll have a sad day. The next one was, should we send all touch points to Google Ads or only the first Gclid?
So this one is up to you. So you can actually choose how you attribute it. You can send multiple Google Click IDs for the same conversion, no problem, to Google Ads. Especially this can be useful if you set up the attribution modeling to be data-driven attribution modeling. You can kind of let Google Ads perform the attribution on its side when you send this data onwards to Google Ads if you send all of the data points. However, if you want to have more control over how this is attributed and not allow, say, the team on the other side to play around with different modeling options, you can model that up front.
Okay, and we have another semi-related question. If they connect Google Ads to their warehouse through Census, can they do syncs hourly, or can they even do syncs less than hourly?
Yeah, we see syncs down to the minute. Every 15 minutes are common as well. So you can certainly sync hourly or even faster.
Okay, Brad, I hope that answers that question for you. And then this next one, with other ad platforms that support offline conversions, can you use Census, or can you use Census for more than just Google Ads?
Today you can send offline conversions to Facebook ads as well. And we're rolling out new integrations all the time. So please do keep in touch.
Okay, and are there any other questions before we sign off?
And actually, I mean, I see Brett's question. Yes, we use the conversion API.
Okay. And we're going to send a recording of this video to all of you guys. If there are questions that we feel we didn't answer well enough, we will also answer that in a personal email to you. And of course, if you need help setting up these offline conversions, we would love to work with you. We would love to solve all these business problems with you. So thank you very much for attending.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming.
Bye.